Dennis Young
Hey.
here, Primitive Substance, very special guest, the godfather of post-punk music in the UK, and so many unbelievable records he put out in that era. And I'm very happy to have Dick O Dell here. Dick, thank you for doing this.
Hi, everybody. Oh, hi,
Yep. Oh,
everybody.
yeah.
That's better.
I've been waiting for this for a while. So let's go back to your early days, how you got involved with Y Records and how this all happened.
Okay, so I was tour managing the Stranglers,
Okay.
uh, and they wanted to have support on their tour. This is when Peaches was released and Ratus Norvegicus. So they went from zero to hero in about 2 seconds. Anyway, they wanted to have local supports on their UK tour. So I was, being the tour manager, I was told to go and get local support. So we put an ad in like Enemy or Melody Maker or something like that. And this band sent in a cassette, because it was all cassettes in those days, my friend. And they were called The Pop Group. And I was like, what?
Oh, that's funny.
And so I thought, well, I've got to put them on. So I put them on for a couple of the shows. And it was quite funny, actually, because the Stranglers shows, because they were so big, they were sold out way in advance, you know. And so when they came on, the Stranglers audience was completely nonplussed.
No, imagine.
Yeah, exactly. They couldn't believe what they were seeing in front of them. This sort of pell-mell load of bodies like racing around, and these jagged sounds, and yeah, it was just crazy stuff. And I took to them.
That's right.
And so basically we stayed in contact, and then they asked me if I would manage them, and I thought, okay, might as well take this one step which I'd never taken before, having worked for loads of bands in other capacities. So I agreed. And then I signed them to Andrew Law. I knew Andrew Lauder, and I signed them to his new label, which was called Radar Records, which Elvis Costello and the Attractions were also on. And I knew Andrew from before. He'd been involved in like Hawkwind, Can, all kinds of really good acts. So and I guess I should move on to when we first came to New York, right?
Yes, of course.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear that. I mean, we'll go over the bands in a minute, but yeah, keep going.
Okay. So, we came to New York courtesy of Sir Freddie Laker. Is that a name that's familiar to you?
No, I've never heard Freddie Laker. Okay.
So he was doing a budget airline, and you could get into New York for £99. And a whole load of bands took advantage of this, all of them booked by Ruth Polsky.
Do
you know Ruth
Never
Polsky?
Heard of that. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe I might have.
She used to book Hurrah.
So yeah, okay.
We put Pop Group went in there. My friend Tony Wilson at Factory wanted to put Joy Division in there, which obviously didn't happen for reasons which I'm sure everybody knows.
Right.
We put the Gang of Four in there, and so on and so forth. But so the first time we went over, it was only possible because of that cheap airfare. And Ruth put them on Hurrah, and it was a great night. And we became very, very firm, fair friends. And I think I've been trying to work this out. I have to be honest with you, but I think she must have been the one who took me to 99.
Oh, wow.
McDougal Street, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Is that
now,
right?
Bill Bauman was the DJ at that time, right? Ed's brother.
Well, that's right. I knew Bill because I think Bill was DJing at Hurrah.
He was.
And so it might have been Bill that introduced me to Ed, but either which way, it was either one of those two, I think. And basically, you know, like I was hanging around doing I don't know what, and she or Bill or whoever would take us out and show us around. the East Village and all this sort of stuff. And these were the days when I was told categorically that on no circumstances should I ever enter Alphabet City.
No, that I know that. We rehearsed in Alphabet City, and that was
dangerous
scary.
business. Dangerous business, Dennis. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So that's how I first met Ed, and of course it was originally his girlfriend's shop, wasn't it? She was doing
Gina Franklin.
That's Gina. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. She was doing clothes. It was kind of like a boutique, and then Ed had his little bit, and he, I really took to him. We became firm friends, and I couldn't license the pop group to him for obvious reasons. They were already signed, but I could license Maximum Joy. So
I remember that
he put out a Maximum Joy single, and then he played me these. I don't know if he played me cassettes or records or whatever, but I think probably cassettes of a couple of bands that he was working with, one of which was called ESG.
Oh, of course.
And the other one of which was called Liquid.
Hey, okay.
And I'm pretty sure that I saw you guys, but I don't know whether it was together or separately, or was it a Hurrah?
Well, our first gig was at Hurrah, a major. Well, we played Tier 3 first. We gave Ed a cassette, one of the guys. He liked it. He came to see us at Tier 3 and then signed us. And then our first big show was at Hurrah. And Bill Bauman recorded 3 of the live tracks that were on the first record.
Gotcha.
That's how that went.
There you go. TR3, Hillary Yeager, very, very good friend of mine. Very, very good friend of mine.
Great club.
She was fantastic, Hillary and TR3. It was a great venue. Basquiat did the DJ booth, painted the DJ booth, and was always hanging around backstage at all the shows at that time, and rolling spliffs and doing sketches, none of which I kept like an idiot.
Okay.
Can you imagine what they people were?
Oh my gosh, you'd be really rich.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we put the Slits on there, and it was a fantastic night. And New York, at that particular time, New York was just brilliant. I was so excited by it. I mean, I was lucky that I was going back and forth all the time because I went aside the pop group and the Slits. And then Pigbag started breaking, and so I was back and forth from New York all the time. And we had our boom boxes on our shoulders when we came, when we flew in. And as soon as we flew in, we tuned them to WBLS. And then you had all the body poppers, the art, Keith Haring and Jean-Michel.
Everything was happening. It was like the center of the universe for a couple of years.
I totally agree with that. And then I was down either at Bob's or wherever buying thousands of fucking 12 inches, which I used to lug home and then DJ back here, West End Records, all those sort of, really great labels. So it was, you're right. It was a brilliant time. I really enjoyed myself at that time in New York City.
I think the beat was a big thing. The big beat. Everybody was into drums and rhythm, and
that's right.
Everybody. So how did you meet the Slits? Because they were a phenomenal group.
Well, this was very interesting. When I got Dennis Bovell to produce the first pop group album, which was kind of a left field choice. Originally, we were maybe going to do it with John Cale, but he flew over to have a meeting with them, and we had a meeting in Bristol, which is where they were based. So we took him out to lunch, and he fell asleep in his lunch, literally.
No, man.
So that was
long night.
Exactly. And then, we were all into our reggae, we were all into our dub, and Dennis had, quite a reputation in that respect. And he was obviously very good in the studio, so that was a given. So we used him for the first program. We became massive friends and friends still after all these years. And then a year later, well, not a whole year later, maybe like 6 months later, I get a phone call from him. Dick, you've got to come down to Ridge Farm immediately. Ridge Farm is the studio I'm talking about. It was a residential. Right. And I was like, why? And he said, you've just got to get down here right now, and I'll tell you why when you get here. So I was like, okay, here we go. So I drove down to Ridge Farm, and turned out it was the Slits. And they were looking for a manager. They'd burned through about 12 managers or something.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh man.
Most of whom, like John Lydon, had been manager for about 5 minutes. I think Malcolm did it for a little while. Malcolm McLaren, I can't really remember. But, and Don Letts was going out with Tess at that time. So he tried to do it. But they didn't really, they wanted a proper manager because they were recording Cut at Ridge Farm. With its very famous cover, which was shot at Ridge Farm. So yeah, they interviewed me by lying on sofas in a darkened room in the middle of summer, trying to kind of suss me out. And I wasn't having any of that. So in the end, we agreed to work together. And so yeah, it was the Pop Group and the Slits, which obviously kind of made a tribe that was influenced by, you know, a lot of different types of music, like, as you say, punk, post-punk, reggae, dub, jazz, tribal music.
I know, I could tell what their sound was. You're right.
Yeah,
I could hear
there's elements of those things in Liquid too, and DSG.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably why Ed and I got on so well, because I think we had very eclectic tastes. You know, I think he knew I was doing a Sun Ra album, and he was like very excited about that. But I couldn't put it out in America because it had already been released by, I think, Nonsuch. No, not
remember them.
Not Nonsuch. What's that label? Anyway, whatever. Rounder.
I know them. Right. I remember those guys.
And the album was called Strange Celestial Road. So I only licensed it for the UK and Europe. Yeah.
And then what I'm really excited about is to talk to you about Pigbag, because my story is I went into Ed's store, and all of a sudden I hear this music. It's like, oh my gosh, these guys sound like the liquid of England, except with horns.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I bought the single, and then I saw their first show in America at the Mud Club.
At the Mud, right? Okay.
And it was phenomenal.
We played so many dates in New York. Like, we played the Mud, we played Irving at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, you guys were hot. That was a hot band.
Yeah, which is why which is one of the reasons why I was coming in so much. But and we kind of had one of the other things that was that I started working with a New York band, which was Pulse Alarma.
Oh, we know them well. We played a show with them.
There you go.
At the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. Yes. Yeah, got it. What a wild night. And
Magnus. Well, they used to take They used to take me to their shows in that Polish place on St. Mark's. I can't remember what it was called.
Club 57.
Club 57. That's the one.
That's
the one. And they used to do these crazy.
I know.
I don't know, what would you call them? Sort of cabaret evenings.
Right, it was.
And I really loved that idea, because it was taking that 30s Berlin idea and putting it into New York, early 80s. And of course, that totally worked. It did. Because you had that same eclecticism that we were talking about. Like Keith Haring would do his thing with a TV and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, this is fucking brilliant, you know. So
the husband lives in my husband's body. The devil lives in my husband's body.
Correct.
I think I have that record. That
was for which I was threatened with lawsuits by the Tourette Syndrome Association of America. So I do like a bit of controversy. as
I could
Prince
tell you
once
about
said.
lawsuits, but that's a whole nother
Oh no,
program. That's a
are we going
whole
down
nother
that road?
program.
Are we going down that road?
I don't know. It's
But,
a long road, but
do you know
anyway.
what? It's a weird one, that one, because obviously I really felt for Ed. I felt for
I
you
did
guys,
too.
but I wasn't
know.
sure. Ed had the bit between his teeth. He was so angry about it.
He was.
And I felt really conflicted because I knew people on the other side, like Keith LeBlanc and Skip, McDonald, and those guys that were in the quote unquote Sugar Hill House band, I suppose it would have been called.
Right.
And I just thought, this is fucking ridiculous. This should be settled. Some kind of deal should be made. And then it just dragged on and dragged on.
It did.
And Ed became more and more disillusioned.
He was.
And it really did him in. And I feel really sad about that because he was a really good guy.
Great guy, great producer.
Yeah.
I mean, and fair.
Great taste in music, you know. It's what it's all about, you know, all us lot that actually, you know, make music one way or another, musicians or managers or labels or whatever. It's all about what we used to do every day was sit around talking about this record, that record, the other record. You know, we all loved music.
And we did. And I love the fact he used to play the records in the store for people. And then, you know, he'd get these imports from the UK, for example, Pigbag or whatever he got. And it was just, wow, where'd this come from? It's fantastic.
Yeah. It was great days, man. Really great days. I really, like yourself, that I actually have said on, I don't know, innumerable occasions, there was the one time when New York was absolutely the center of that world.
I believe it.
Call it the music world, but it was also much wider culturally, you know. So, because like I say, you had those amazing artists happening at the time and so on and so forth, you know.
Because you had post-punk and then it developed into rap, hip-hop, rap.
Yeah, exactly.
All that started in that area.
Exactly.
In New York.
So and it was hugely influential over here. I mean, you've only got to look at Buffalo Girls, look at what Nena did after, because she was hanging around with the Slits for when she was like 14 years old.
Yeah, oh, amazing.
Well, we did a tour in the UK and to promote the first Slits album, and it was the Slits, Don Cherry.
Oh, yeah.
And Moki called me up and said, would it be all right if Nena came on the tour? I was like, you're asking me. I should be asking you. But she was an honorary Slit straight away. And then later on, obviously, she joined Gareth out of the Pop Group, his new band, Rip, Rig and Panic. So the circle was the circle.
There were so many clubs that opened and closed, though, in New York. Besides, you know, the Danceteries and the Raws of the world, there was some of these clubs
Lounge,
that played there with Conk.
Yeah, there you
Conk?
go. Conk played with us at Irving Plaza. They were kind of like the American Pigbag, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Yeah,
and but they were really good band.
And Defunct, fuck me, they were good.
Defunct. I just interviewed Joe Bowie from Defunct, and I interviewed Jordy Gillespie from Conk. So I'm really getting this.
You've been interviewing like everybody I fucking know.
This has been the focus of this.
I was obviously
series.
Very interested to see the Beinhorn one for obvious reasons, being as indirectly we worked on the same record.
Yeah. Oh. Now, how did you get associated with Rough Trade? How did that happen?
Okay, so I always lived in West London, and what I did was I used to go down to the Rough Trade shop, which was on Kensington Park Road. This would be, I think it opened like 76, something like that. And they started doing 7-inch singles. They imported 7-inch singles from Europe, like Kleenex from, I think.
I remember them.
Yeah, and all these things, and a lot of American stuff, but basically a lot of 7-inch singles. And so they started doing records themselves because the Raincoats were local. You know, there was a proper West London music scene, which was already kind of kicking, you know. So, when both the Pop Group and the Slits got dropped by their record labels. Pop Group by Radar and the Slits by Island, which I never forgave Chris Blackwell for. Even though we still laugh about it all these decades later.
Right.
I still think he should have stuck with them. But anyway, I thought, well, fuck it. What we have to do is go independent. And that's exactly what we did. So the first single we released was a double A side of the Pop Group's Where There's a Will, There's a Way.
Right.
And the Slits in the beginning, there was Rhythm. And yeah, it carried on from there and then just kind of snowballed, yeah.
And that was a 7-inch, right? I believe, right? A 7-inch.
That was a double A side 7-inch. So it was a very good record to start off with because I knew.
Oh yeah, I know it.
To some extent, it was going to sell. So,
well, it had that feel that time. You know, it was just something in the air that everybody was feeling, and then from New York, it just expanded out to Europe. And well, you guys were doing it in Europe too, but you didn't. When you hooked up with Ed, I'm sure you saw what was happening. Now, what about Shriekback? How did you get in touch with work with them?
So when the Gang of Four first came down to London, the woman that was working with me, Linda Neville, who's now called Linda Jenks, married name, came from Croydon. So that Gang of Four had nothing to do with Croydon, but the guy who was looking after them at that time, who was not a manager at all, was a guy called Rob Waugh, and he was also from Croydon. So they sent me, I remember what it was now. So Bob Last, is that a name you know?
No.
Okay, he had a label called Fast Product. And he sent me down by post, obviously, no links in those days. Sent me down by post 2 EPs, one by Human League, which was called Being Boiled. Which
I remember them.
First thing they ever did. And one by Gang of Four, which was the Damaged Goods EP. And I was really taken with Love Like Anthrax. I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever heard. So Linda said to me, would you mind if we get Rob in and we could maybe give him some advice about what to do with this band Gang of Four, which were kind of out of Leeds University. 3 of them were at Leeds University. And so that duly took place. And he said, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And I said, yeah, we can do all of that. So we started getting them shows in London, started talking to labels, started talking to publishers, yada, yada, yada. And in the end, they signed to EMI with a very good friend of mine called Chris Briggs. And when Gang of Four started breaking big, I couldn't really give them the time, because Y Records was really taking off and I was like mega busy. And I wanted to carry on doing all the kinds of records that we were doing, because we were doing improvised records by Steve Beresford and all, and so on, and the Sun Ra one, and all these kind of things. So, which I really enjoyed doing. Anyway, so eventually Dave left the Gang of Four. Dave Allen left the Gang of Four, the bass player, and then he started working with Barry Andrews, and they were demoing in EMI Publishing's demo studio. And Linda and I went over to have a listen, or she dragged me over to have a listen, probably more likely. And I was blown away. I was like, this is fucking fantastic. So we started putting their records out. So yeah, that's how Shriekback came about.
They must have sold it. Did they sell a lot of records for you? Were they?
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, because one of the great problems that indie labels have is that if you've got something that's taking off, in quotes, you then have to try to make sure that record is available in other countries, which means you have to do a whole load of licensing deals, which is a total pain in the ass, frankly.
I'm sure.
And then, of course, bands start thinking, well, we quite like to have advances, which is not something that most indies can't really do. So it's actually very, very hard work, that whole thing. And in the end, we had to let them go, and they went off to Arista. But we did, you know, two great albums with them, and a mini album, Tench, which is really great. So yeah, you know, we had a really good run with them, so it's fantastic.
Now I want to show you some 9/9 history here. You might be pretty excited to see.
Oh my God! There it is.
Do you know this record?
I do.
It's now the story behind this. This was a promotion record, right?
Show me more closely. Hang on.
And anyway.
Oh yeah, Bellhead. Yes.
There it is, right? And believe it, it was done in one day.
That came up. That came up recently somehow. Bellhead.
It recorded, mixed, and mastered in one day.
Excellent.
For both sides. I think we did Push and we did Bellhead. And this was a Ed promotion.
Right.
Basically. Out of the blue, Ed called us and said, guys, we're doing this promotion. We need you at the studio. And I don't know how we did it. But it's rather rare now. I don't think anybody really has many copies.
I still see people talking about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a couple copies left. Maybe I'll send you one.
Okay. Yeah.
If you really, I have like 3 or 4 left. I mean, I think you would love to have it.
Oh, I would very much. I'm sure I did used to have it.
Yeah. And then I wanted to show you a couple more.
I'd either buy stuff or he used to give me stuff, you know.
And then before that was the Idiot Orchestra.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And this is a rare 45 of this. And this was done. It was a 12-piece band, and that's how I started working with the guys. Because Sal Principato was in it. Richard McGuire. In fact, Richard played clarinet in that group. So if you get a chance to ever see this, it was re-released, but nothing beats that. And then there's one more I want to show you, and I wasn't even in this before. There was Liquid. There was Liquid Idiot.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
There it is. I still have a copy of it.
Oh my
God! It's
these must be like gold dust. These things.
You know, look at these. So I thought you'd get a kick out of seeing those. I still have copies, and I figured it was quite an amazing history there.
Yeah, that's
how all this started.
Well, he was doing. Who was he doing stuff with? He did some really great records.
Oh, I know. He was just the ESG records are iconic.
I mean, if I hadn't done Pulse Alarma, I think he probably would have done Pulse Alarma. Although I think they found me more entertaining.
Yeah, he never put out Conk, but he did distribute it, I believe. I don't know how that deal worked out.
Yeah, I wonder. It was their own label, I think, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
But Ed sorely missed. I mean, I just feel bad.
Time, man.
I really feel bad. I wish he would have done more music because he was such a great producer. He had such an ear for music.
Absolutely.
And what was happening at the time.
Yeah, and he was a really, really nice man, you know.
Great man. So let's move on to Guerilla Records.
Oh, right, okay.
This is another adventure, right? Into progressive house music, you guys.
Yeah. Well, it was dubbed progressive house by Mixmag. I called it dub house disco, and there was a reason for that, which was that I was known as Dick O Dell, one of my sort of.
Saw that. Okay.
And so, and I used to go around when I was an arrogant twat, which I've only just stopped being.
Right. There you go.
At 70 years old. I used to say that all dance music was disco, and it used to drive people fucking crazy.
Boy.
They used to, how can you say that?
Nobody wanted to hear it, right?
Well, the truth of the matter is that where you most want to hear dance music is in a disco.
Right.
And dancing. Yeah. You know, the drugs might have changed, but the music somewhat. but you could still dance to it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that started 90. Well, actually, it started originally as a kind of a way of doing William Orbit's Bassomatic project, 12-inch dance mixes, and we wanted them to come out rather than through Virgin, who I signed him to, but through our own imprint, with an eye to maybe, if it worked out well, we would start doing other records. And that's how it turned out, because they did come out in that way. But we also then started working with Leftfield.
I know them. They were great.
Well, I was really big fans of Not Forgotten and More Than I Know, which were two early records they released on Rhythm King. Now, Rhythm King, Martin Heath and Adele were really good friends of mine. Daniel Miller was a friend of mine since when I started Y Records. He more or less started Mute Records at the same time. So we were really good friends from way back. And so when he added Rhythm King to his sort of Mute roster, as it were, they were having great success with Mark Moore, S Express, who's another very good friend of mine and who worked with William on some of his remixes. What was his name? Bomb the Bass. Bomb the Bass. But so Leftfield got a little bit kind of trampled underfoot, because these things were crossing over into the charts. Theme from S Express, Beat This, so on and so forth. They were all crossing over into the charts. So Leftfield got a little bit forgotten, which is, ironic, not forgotten. But I loved those records, and I just thought, you know what, I want to use these guys. Let's have them remix React to Rhythm's track Intoxication, which we had delivered. And they did an absolutely stonking remix of it. And when it hit the clubs, that was it. And we were up and running straight away. And then we added D.O.P, Super Real, all sorts of things. And some American stuff, like I did something with DJ Pierre, Drop the Bomb, Felix the House Cat, Felix the House Cat.
Now, I remember the song with John Lydon.
Yeah.
Oh, they still play that.
Open Up.
Still played a lot. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you see, again, the same thing. There's a circle of people. And everybody intermingles. They work with each other on different projects. And because, of course, John was the partner of Ari's mum. So I used to see John all the time. Yeah. Ari's mum was the den mother of the Slits. And a really wonderful woman. I mean, she's passed now, which is a real shame. But John looked after her for her entire life, and so great credit to him for that. I mean, he can be a pain in the arse, but he's deliberately a pain in the arse.
No, I'm sure he is. But what are you going to do? That's what people are like.
People react to it, and he goes, "Job done."
Oh yeah.
For fuck's sake.
Well, Liquid was big into this record.
Oh man, yeah.
We were that and Flowers of Romance, I think.
Well, again, all these connections, because Gina Birch, I went out with Gina Birch from the Raincoats, and we lived opposite Richard Dudansky, who is the drummer on that and had been the drummer in the 101ers with Joe Strummer. So you've got a Clash Pill crossover there.
Yeah.
So incredible. That's what I mean. It's all a big soup, all of it.
Yeah, like Keith Levine was on a Vivian Goldman record.
Keith was going out with one of the Pulse Lama.
And that's something, right? It's just
he was living in a car somewhere downtown. Oh man.
That's why it was a small world back then. Now it's so so much music. But then you had that clique of like really just great artists. Yeah. Intermingling and
we had brilliant times.
You did. You guys were really great. So how long did that last with Guerilla? Did that?
I would say 4 or 5 years. You know, none of these things, not even Y Records actually, none of these things last that long. They have a shelf life,
Right.
and you kind of know when it's over, and you just go, you know what, forget it, it's over, move on, do the next
Right.
thing, whatever the next thing is. You know, maybe have a holiday.
Yeah. That's it. So what did you do in the 2000s? What I see you did Bat for Lashes, Ed
Yeah,
Harcourt, what Harcourt. So what was the music like there? Because I'm not
Ed
familiar with
Ed
the
Ed
music.
was how would you describe? Well, he's, ostensibly you'd say singer songwriter, but it doesn't really. It sounds a bit. He's quite a character, and he
Mm.
liked to have quite interesting instruments on his records and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, that was. I saw him at one of these songwriter evenings that you have. I don't know if you have them in New York. I'm sure you do,
Oh yeah.
where you have a club and then maybe like 10 people play like 3 songs each, that
Mm.
kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And I was at one of those, which I don't, not really my scene, but anyway. And he came on, and it was just him and a trumpet player. And I thought, this is great.
That is.
So, yeah. So, and then I don't know if you've read the Heavenly book, the Heavenly Records book, but
No. No.
Robin Turner who wrote that book, says that I bullied Heavenly into signing him.
I got to look into that. Oh, that's now. Were you producer on a lot of these later
But
records?
you
What was
see,
your role
I'm
at
just
that
going to
time?
backtrack. There was
Sure.
again huge connections because Heavenly were doing nights every week, and their main DJs were called the Dust Brothers, which then became the Chemical Brothers.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, like again, the whole
Yeah,
thing, the whole circle starts again,
that's
and
something.
everybody jumps on again until it's time to
Jumps on
jump off.
board and then jumps.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Like train
So,
stops, right? Hey,
and
I'm
yeah,
stopping here.
he got nominated for Mercury, which
Mm.
unfortunately was the same day as 9/11. So
Oh boy.
not in there. It was a terrible night, really bad, really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And then Natasha Khan, how did that come about? Oh yeah, I'd gone down to Brighton to see a band, and the bar of this venue was actually outside the room, you know, the music room, as it were.
Mm.
So I'm sitting at the bar, minding my own business, having a drink, and these 2 guys come out of the venue and they're going, "She's fucking weird," and I
Mm.
was like, "Ooh." So I thought, better go and have a look. So I went in, and she was channeling Nico to the max. Hair right down over her eyes, black hair, because she's Anglo-Pakistani, so her hair's
Nico,
thick.
huh? Huh.
Yeah, oh, big time, man. And we managed Nico for
Oh,
about a
you
month.
did.
For about a month, it was yeah, it was. There's not a lot you can say
Was
about.
very difficult. Was she difficult to work with, or just
Well,
strange?
she had certain requirements, which you know what I'm talking about,
Okay.
and I wasn't prepared to do that.
Mm.
I'm not
Well,
a. I'm not a. I don't go out scoring
no,
for my
man.
artists. No, no, and certainly not that drug.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have mind scoring acid or coke for them,
Yeah, that's
but
something.
not that drug. Anyway, yeah, it became impossible essentially. So,
Did you
but
work with Did you work with John Cale at all during that
well,
time?
no, that was the interesting. Well, that to be perfectly honest with you, that dinner, that lunch with the pop group was the one and only time I think that I ever met John. Funnily enough, and obviously it wasn't a particularly brilliant event, but you know, always been a fan, obviously, and you know, his contribution to Velvet Underground is absolutely amazing.
Oh
So,
yeah, of course.
you know, in fact, he is what made that band. Lou Reed, you can't deny, obviously, in terms of
Right.
songwriting and so forth. But in terms of the sound, you've got to say John Cale for sure.
Oh, he's a genius with that.
Yeah.
He was.
And weirdly enough, there's a connection there because of Patti Smith. And
Oh.
they didn't get on. They didn't get on. And the pop group toured with Patti Smith in the UK. And so I asked her, why didn't you get on with John Cale? And she was like this.
Oh, boy.
Oh, okay. Too controlling was the upshot, if you like. But anyway, so you're now getting all this fucking gossip as well.
That's all right. Who cares? It's it's 2024 already. I got to tell you a funny story. Do you know this gentleman, Giorgio Gamelski?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, everybody knows
When you're talking
Giorgio.
about him, yeah, you were talking about him. That's right. I remember.
Everybody I know knew
Well,
in some way.
actually, if truth be told, he was before my time,
Okay.
which I've got to tell you is quite an unusual thing to say. But he was more kind of early 60s, I think.
Right.
Like Yardbirds. He had something to do with them, and maybe he was involved with the Stones early doors before Andrew Loog Oldham and so forth. He had a label, didn't he?
Yes. Yep. But he would hang out in New York though in the early 80s. We used to see him all the time. We used to see him all the time outside. Hey, I'm Giorgio.
See, that's kind of a shame that I never ran into him, because we would have good conversations for sure.
I can't think of the name. He used to hang out at this blues club in New York that we used to play at. We played there once, but I can't think of the name of it. But it was hysterical. But a lot of people I've talked to on this series, oh yeah, I knew Giorgio from this.
Yeah.
No,
it's funny when I used to go to all these clubs in New York, like obviously Danceteria, because Mark Kamen was a good friend of mine. That's one story. Well, actually, I'll tell you that story. Why not?
Sure.
So Mark and I were really good friends, and I was in New York one time, and we arranged to have dinner. And he said, "I'm working with this girl doing demos. Do you mind if I bring her along? Because we'll probably go back in the studio after the dinner." And I said, "Yeah, sure, no worries." So I turned up at the restaurant, and there's Mark, and there's this girl, kind of chubby, covered in crucifixes, beads. Do you know where I'm going?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Yeah, it's her. It was her. It was Madonna.
I knew it.
So he excused himself to go to the bathroom. And I was like, oh, what am I supposed to say to this girl? We're just the pair of us sitting at the table. We don't know each other. She knows fuck all about my background. And so I said something stupid like, how do you see your career going? Or some really crappy, like industry fucking idiotic line, And she said, "Oh, no, I've got it all planned out." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I'm going to sleep with everybody I need to get what I want." And I was like, "That's a good plan."
Yeah. Well, she was dating this guy, Jelly Bean.
There you go. She went from Mark to Jelly Bean, and from Jelly Bean to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
In fact, we did play at the Funhouse when the White Lines record came out. Right. And he would be the DJ there at that time. So it's kind of like
he was a really good guy, a real good guy, and a really good friend. I made lots of really good, obviously, Roger Trilling, which I don't think he didn't come up in the Beinhorn one, did he?
No, I don't think so.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how my Herbie involvement occurred. It's exactly the same thing, actually, funnily enough. I knew Roger because I was a big fan of Material, and therefore I knew Roger, and I knew Bill a bit. Okay. I didn't know Michael that well, I've got to be honest. And I knew Anton Fehr, who I think might have played with that band for a bit, and certainly was in other bands. The drummer who's
quite a good one. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to love going to watch him play. But anyway, so flew into New York, call Roger Roger says, got to come over to this studio right now, which I think was in Brooklyn. And so I got a fucking very expensive cab out of the city because I might have been in and out of New York all the time, but I was not metro subway knowledgeable yet, although I did become so. Anyway, so got this cab out to the studio, and I walk in, and there's Bill sitting there and Roger, and they said, we want to play you this track, and because we need an outside opinion, and you're you know, you have a certain status, or at least enough of a status for us to play. So they parked me right at the middle of the control desk, you know, the mixing desk,
right,
with the two giant speakers, and then they played me Rocket.
Oh, well, you know, I spoke to Michael Benhorn.
Yeah,
about that.
I watched that thing when
You
sent
saw
it
it,
to,
yeah?
yeah,
It was great.
and it was really, really interesting because he came at it from a completely different angle to me. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't even know if he was there that night. But anyway, so I made a rather ridiculous statement, well, which was true, which is that I said at the end of it, I just went, this is going to change the face of dance music completely.
They did, yes.
And they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, met Tony Meinhardt, Mylant, who was a fucking just one of the funniest guys I've ever met, completely unknowingly, but he was so brash. He was like that classic American brash, I know it all type thing. And I just used to sit when I was with him, having any sort of discussion. I used to sit there laughing my head off, and he always thought it was really funny that I thought he was funny, you know, because it was all for show, you know. But anyway, he was managing Herbie, changed the direction. The record company were like really iffy about the whole project. I'm sure you know about this. And so me saying that sort of had some effect. Call it a ripple effect. I don't want to overplay it. But basically what I said was, you know what, I'll work this record in the UK. And to be honest, it was a piece of piss. It could not have been easy.
Wow.
Oh, totally, man. I took a 12-inch to all the dance music stores, and you play it once, and they would go, how many can I get?
Oh,
that's not something that ever happens.
No,
normally,
I'm sure.
They say, I'll order 10, I'll order 20.
Right.
How many can I get? Every single store. So, like I said, it was a piece of piss. It was so easy. And then, obviously, when the video, Godley and Crumb video was done, a single was released. It was a huge hit. And then, lo and behold, I'm in my office one day, and this package is delivered, and it's a gold disc from Herbie with a beautiful.
Oh, that's beautiful.
With a beautiful note saying, "Thanks, Dick, for everything you did." Blah blah blah. Because I'd see him when he came out to do promotion and all that sort of stuff, you know.
That was
and
such
really nice man. Plus,
Yeah.
I was a fan, you know. I had headhunters. He knew I was a fan. You know, I mean, I was a Miles freak, you know. I mean, we had certain things in our backgrounds that we both loved. So, yeah.
But that was such a bold move, you know, considering he came.
Well, that's why I was saying. I think
Yeah.
they was fishing. They needed people. They needed affirmation, and they needed affirmation for people that they could go to Columbia and say, "Well, this guy says this is going to happen if you do this," so that Columbia would go, "You know what? This might actually work." And because from Columbia's perspective, even though his record sales had been declining, he still had a very, very strong base. But it was in a different area. That was the problem.
Yep.
And what was great about Rocket and Future Shock was that it crossed him over to a much younger crowd, and that was fantastic. And of course, I knew DST a bit from Roger, I think. I can't really remember. Like, I used to meet a lot of those guys. Like, part of my problem with the whole Sugar Hill thing was that I knew Bobby.
You did? Okay.
I'd licensed records from him. for Enjoy label. So I'd put out records by Treacherous 3.
Oh yeah, well, we played with them. That iconic show.
All those early guys,
Yes.
So I knew Bobby, and therefore I knew a lot of those guys. And so, yeah, when I was in New York, not only was I sort of hanging out with the sort of the St. Mark's Place crowd, if you like, the Pulse Alarma crowd and the ESG and Liquid and Ed and all those sort of guys, and Conk and all these sort of guys. Also, I was hanging out with the rappers, because they were doing their thing. So that's why I loved it so much, because all of those different types of music were all kind of coming on top at the same time, and it's fantastic.
Well, the iconic show.
To be fair, White Lines was a great track.
It was. But the iconic story that Rick Rubin used to hang out.
I knew you were going to bring his name up, and I'll bring
you knew that was
Rick's
coming,
story in a minute. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he came into the store and said, "I want to do a show at the Diplomat Hotel."
I remember.
Rinky-dink hotel with a big ballroom, and us, Treacherous 3, and Heart Attack.
Oh wow, cool. Yeah.
And what happened? It was a bust. Nobody showed up. It was sparsely, but I think that show was an iconic show in blending all of that music together.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we used to do the same thing over here. I mean, one of the shows we did with the pop group, we had a pop group, Cabaret Voltaire, and Linton Kwesi Johnson, all on the same bill.
Okay.
We used to do, that's why I was talking about that Slits bill. That Slits bill was the Slits, Don Cherry, and Prince Hammer, and Creation Rebel. So 3 very different types of music. And I really like doing that. So what he should have done is that he should have called me, and I would have said, "This is what you need to do."
Right. So what's the Rick Rubin story?
The Rick Rubin story.
We got to hear this.
Yeah, there you go. So I'd met him. I can't remember where. It might have been at a Gang of 4 show. I really can't remember, in New York. And anyway, so much water under the bridge. And so Guerilla Records, which is obviously, we're now talking 94, something like that.
Okay.
And we were doing club nights all over the world. And so we did one in New York, and which I came over for, and it was like guerrilla DJs. William Orbit did something, I can't remember, probably a Bass-O-Matic type thing. And then I'm like standing on the stage, and on the other side of the stage, I see this guy with this really shaggy long hair and a beard and a shitty t-shirt on, and I'm like, that's fucking Rick, that is. So I go over and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing at this? And he said, my interests are wide.
Yeah.
And I was like, there you go. Rick Rubin, fucking star.
He used to have these dark glasses on.
Yeah.
That show. He'd stand in the back with dark glasses,
that's it. You could barely sort of see him, really.
Right. It was.
He had the shaved black t-shirt.
Yep.
Yeah, this black hair, black beard, But the work he did with Johnny Cash was absolutely brilliant. So his place in heaven is guaranteed.
So what are you doing now? Are you still involved with music, Dick?
No.
Done?
Oh no. I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm actually visiting my friends, which is something I didn't have the opportunity to do for fucking 50 years.
Okay.
And going to exhibitions. I go to a lot of exhibitions, go to the cinema. I do a monthly radio show on Portobello Radio. And that's pretty much it.
Do you come into New York at all? Do you travel into the city?
I'm not traveling. I'm not doing that long distance shtick anymore, because right the way through, even from when I first started working with bands, which was like 1970, 71, right through to when I retired, which is a few years ago now, I was on planes all the damn
Oh,
time.
that burns you
I
out.
mean, I was doing New York and LA like at least 4 times a year, every
Oh,
year. And then I was doing Japan, long haul shit, Australia. I've got to tell you, before everybody thinks I'm whining, obviously these were brilliant places. I made a lot of friends. I love going to all these different places. Each had their own attractions to me. And each time I dived into the culture of each of these places. But it does take it out of you long haul.
I'm sure,
Constant
yeah.
long haul. So I'm actually not doing that at the moment, but I feel like I need to do at least one more New York and one more LA before it becomes actually impossible for me to fly to do those kind of flights. So yeah, one day.
What about a book? I mean,
There is a book.
There is. I can't wait to read that.
It's in re-edit as we speak.
Okay. Oh,
So,
that's gonna be one of the
and
best.
all these stories that you've heard
Oh,
in
can't
that
wait.
book. Yeah.
It's
Cool.
well, it's been now. Where can we find? Is any of this music still available? That or is it gone?
If you're in the UK, I would say Discogs.
Okay.
Which is a record retailing site of secondhand records, and generally they get records that are well looked after. As you can see, it's almost dark here.
Yeah.
I'm like this voice in the dark.
Void, right?
Yeah, so that's a good site for Y Records, for Guerilla Records. They know me, I know them. Occasionally I ask them questions about my own records.
Now, is this all digital now, or do you have actual physical copies left? Or
no, I don't do any of that.
Probably have to go to eBay or one of those.
Well, go to Discogs.
Okay, I'll go there. Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of Y stuff, a lot of Guerilla stuff, and there's like little bits of info about all. But they're all secondhand records, I think. I don't think you can get new stuff anywhere. Maybe stuff comes up on eBay. Obviously, I don't need to get it.
Since you've taken the time and come here, I'm gonna try. If you send me over your address, I'm gonna definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
For your collection, I think you would love it.
Yeah, indeed.
I have some left, but I'm only giving it to special people like
cool.
yourself who've made such a difference.
Thank you.
You really have. You made the series. I mean, this was the idea for all this is to bring out people like yourself from that era and hear the experiences that I lived through. Through somebody else's eyes.
Well, now I've been on this. I'm going to be looking. I'm going to be checking you out, Dennis.
You better check it out now, I'm kidding. But no, we've had 3 compilations now out, and there might be another one. We really love Domino. They put out the last Liquid compilation.
Yeah, Lawrence is a really great
nice
guy.
People. And, really fair, nice, very nice people.
Actually, talking about indies and majors, I know we've just run out, but a short Lawrence story. That label was a tiny label, and then Franz broke, and then obviously Arctic Monkeys broke, and we used to have a beer on Fridays. I'd go over to his office to have a beer with him, and he was like, "I don't know what to do. Should I give these acts up?" And I said, well, you can go one or two ways. You can do the licensing thing. It's going to be a shitload of work, but you retain, it's still your stuff. Right. And he went that route, and look what he's made of that label.
Unbelievable.
Brilliant label.
But he's a fair guy. He's very nice.
And one of my best friends. So yeah.
Just tell him I said hello because.
Well, and vice versa, because he'd be surprised it's coming through this
yeah, I'm sure he'll want to see it.
This route of communication.
He's really done great for us. We had a reunion show in 2008 to release the recording in London. That was really at Barbican, which was such a thrill.
I wish I'd come to that. Yeah.
Yeah. The one time we
I would have been working, I guess.
It was the one time we got dressed up. We spent all this money on suits. We went to this French clothing store in Soho, and everybody was dressed up in these, suits. It was
nice. Suited and booted.
there's a cavern I think you could still find, but I don't know what happened to the rest of the show. It was apparently recorded,
Oh,
but apparently it disappeared. So,
okay.
like everything else, like our masters disappeared. I don't know if you're aware of that. We
No,
don't have the
no.
masters anymore for
Yeah,
meds.
these things,
I don't
that
know.
tends to happen. Anyway,
But anyway, it was been fantastic. Dick, keep in touch. Send me your address, and I'll
will
make
do.
sure to get you this record. And maybe we could do this again sometime.
Okay. Cheers. See ya.
Okay. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.